Now, welcome back. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen has rejected the suggestion that more parties be added into the government of national unity, stating that it would only further complicate things within the coalition. Now, John Steenhuisen says that he does not believe that expanding the GNU by inviting MK Party and the EFF will help it move forward, arguing that such a move would make things worse. Now, the DA says it hasn't received any communication from the ANC regarding the expansion of the Government of National Unity. But to help us unpack what all of this means, we're joined virtually now by political analysts Khanyi, Magubane and Sanusha Naidu. Ladies, good morning and welcome to both of you. Let me start with you, Khanyi. What do you make of this suggestion, firstly, to expand the Government of National Unity, and then, of course, the GA's uncomfortability with that supposition?
Good morning, Sakina. You know, when the SG Figilambalula had the post-NEC briefing earlier this week, and he mentioned the reset, as he called it, the first thing that came to my mind is, are they able to do that without the buy-in of the current 10 political parties in the GNU? And of course, we know that the statement of intent that had a clause that says that they have to have a collective decision towards this. The ANC cannot take a unilateral decision to decide to reset the GNU. However, if we just go back to what Figile mentioned, that the GNU was a temporary structure set up to implement the policies of the ANC. So what we can see is that first things first, there is a difference of opinion on what the GNU is, first things first. And that is a very key and crucial point, because it is upon that point that the NEC is calling on the mother body to start taking these steps. And if the GNU partners actually refuse, then I think that will be the real test of the GNU, over and above all the other issues that we've seen cause conflict amongst the GNU partners.
Speaking of the statement of intent, Sanusha, again, the ANC now believes that since it is the party that established this Government of National Unity, it has the right to invite others to also become a part of it. And the DA, of course, feels differently about that and would, I would imagine, try to impose this statement of intent in order to follow that as a means of moving forward. What's your take on that?
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to all the viewers. Yeah, I think it's really the challenge of how this GNU came into being, how it was established, how it was incubated, and how much it actually creates this tussle, this kind of push and pull between the ANC on the one hand and the Democratic Alliance on the other. We've seen a lot of reports, a lot of post-analysis of that 11th hour signing of the Statement of Intent last year in June, when the Parliament of the 7th administration was being instituted, and how much of that created tension within the GNU between the ANC and the DA around ownership, around who actually has the legitimacy and who controls the GNU in many ways. And they keep reminding each other through various ways, through various means of whether it's the tension, whether it is how they seek to say that, well, if you want to leave the GNU, leave. The DA says, no, we won't leave, but we want to attend the National Convention, etc. The ANC then gets grumpy. So it's this kind of push and pull in the GNU, which makes the GNU very precarious at that level.
Khanyi
is not, sorry.
Sorry, Sanusha, we just seem to be losing your audio there intermittently. So my apologies. Please continue, and hoping that it will hold.
Okay, so just want to say that it's not only the fact of whether you add new parties to the GNU makes it more fragile. I think the GNU in itself, given these tensions and these tussles, is already in a very kind of vulnerable position. So it's not just about bringing in new parties, because you're not actually resolving what these tensions are about the legitimacy, ownership, and the undertaking of the GNU is supposed to create, and of course the interpretation of it.
So just before I get to you, Khanyi, I want to go back to Sanusha regarding those tensions. So we see the tensions and we see how they have played out, for example, in the whole budget saga within Parliament. But if we look at the DA, and looking at the tensions that exist and how they have now responded to a suggestion of an expansion of the GNU, what does that tell us about the DA's own political calculus within the Democratic Alliance itself? And also, you know, what does it tell us about the DA's long-term strategy as it pertains to the GNU and contesting elections as soon as next year?
Well, I think, Sakina, the challenge for the DA is that if it's outside of the GNU, then it doesn't really have that kind of leverage that it seeks to have within the GNU to try and push for what it sees as its own kind of engagement at the policy level in terms of the governance questions and so forth. So it is a dilemma on the one hand for the DA. Do we leave? Do we stay in the GNU? But leaving the GNU is not necessarily an option for the DA because it creates the DA to be outside of those spaces of political architecture and, of course, governance and, of course, policy making and trying to push forward with its vision of how it wants to define the template and the policy dynamic around the kind of decision-making process and the kind of way in which it sees the South African political body going. And remember, the DA also keeps talking about this idea that it's rescuing South Africa and it has to be in the GNU because it's rescuing South Africa. Now, that is a tension in itself because it doesn't sit well with, say, the ANC about, well, what are you rescuing us from? Are you rescuing us from the ANC or are you rescuing us from something else? On the other hand, for the DA as well, and also for other political parties, is being in the GNU gives them sight of each other, gives them the ability to also play that role of trying to put fire under the feet of the ANC in terms of how they want to go forward. I suspect next year's local government election or end of next year, early next 2027 will be critical to kind of see that trajectory around of how they resolve those tensions, but how they actually work together or seek to work together, whether they do work together at the local government level. And then the last point around this is where do they go in 2029? Is a coalition where they want to be, or is it moving towards maybe what was the debate before this in terms of the establishment of the GNU, and that is, should there be a minority government? Is that where the trajectory of both, not just the DA, but I think most political parties that are going to be probably front and center and still survive until 2029 think about what minority government looks like, and that was what was the debate in terms of whether the ANC should have went into a GNU or formed a minority government.
What's also interesting here, Khanyi, is of course the DA's opposition to adding more parties to the GNU. If you think about who could potentially be the other parties to enter into this government of national unity, the EFF has been very clear. They will not join for as long as the DA and the Freedom Front Plus are part of the government of national unity. So who is likely to join if that is to become a reality? And by doing so, if there is an expansion from a governance perspective, is that likely to complicate things further, or will it make things better?
Well, Sakina, as much as you say it couldn't possibly be the EFF, I think it's most definitely the EFF that they're trying to make space for. Because remember, what was a deal breaker before is a negotiable now. And we know that the DA and the Freedom Front Plus's presence within the GNU was part and parcel of the reason why they refused to join. However, it's just over a year later now. They've seen the ANC and the DA and the other GNU partners go through intense, conflict. And in fact, John alluded to the fact that perhaps what they need within the GNU is conflict resolution management and not so much this issue of if we don't agree, let's leave. Let's look at the EFF and why I believe the EFF is definitely the party that the ANC is fighting for. At a local government level, the EFF has been very instrumental to help the ANC take a number of crucial decisions using the support that they have in using losing the number of seats that they have in the different municipalities. We can only just point to the recent failure of the DA's and inability to pass the motion of no confidence against Dada Morero in the city of Johannesburg. It was the EFF and their 29 seats, which they gave to the ANC along with other minority party, that actually helped the ANC to win that particular call. And it's not so much because the ANC or the DA or the EFF, I would say, is got confidence in Dada, but they're not willing to let Dada go on the DA's ticket. And I do believe that the DA has more incentive to be in the GNU more than the ANC has to keep them in there, because if we look at the fact that the DA doesn't have friends, really, to be honest, within the local government sector, they struggled to get parties to vote with them in motions of no confidence. They struggled to get any alliance partners on anything they want to vote on at the moment. And so the EFF, I think, for the past year has gone far and beyond to try and show the ANC that they are a worthy partner, that they should create space for them. However, we don't want to bulk up the cabinet as it speaks to further, state expenditure. I think that the ANC knows for a fact that once they bring in the EFF, that means that parties like the DA will have less seats within the cabinet. We'll see less DA ministers. We'll see less DA influence. And in many ways, I think this is the ANC's way to try and dilute the DA, because they do feel that they are a bit too powerful right now. And Helen Zille, for instance, has said it on many occasions that the ANC needs them as much as they need the ANC. But if I'm to be honest, I think the DA needs the GNU more than the ANC needs them in the GNU.
I'd love your view on that, Sanusha. Do you see the EFF and the Democratic Alliance in the GNU at the same time?
Well, if the words that they say and the kind of swipes they take against each other is anything to go by, well, theoretically, no. But politics is a funny game. It's very transactional. It's about survival. It's about how do you actually think about yourself first before the people who vote for you. And I think to a large extent, the challenge right now is that the GNU is becoming that transactional unit. That are we in the GNU because we want to be GNU and we genuinely believe that the GNU is a coalition arrangement that can work for the betterment of South Africa, and that's what the electorate voted for? Or are we in the GNU to keep others out? And I think that's the challenge right now going forward. So if the DA and the EFF are both mitigating each other against who gets into the GNU, we haven't even spoken about the MK party as well. So in this context, for me, the challenge is that it may be that the issue at hand is not really whether or not you actually want the GNU to be operationalized in the highest level that you want it to, but keeping other political parties out is more the mainstream game that you're playing as opposed to whatever. Because it shouldn't be an either or situation. If South Africans have voted, if South Africans have basically made their mark and had now communicated their intention about what they are looking for in the context of coalitions and political parties working together, this notion of keeping other political parties out of the GNU then is nonsensical and actually deviates and undermines what the voters have asked for.
So how might that square with the public then, Khanyi, if indeed the public views the DA as gatekeepers of this GNU?
Start with their own constituents. I don't think DA constituents want them in the GNU, first things first. If we just read the atmosphere on social media and how traditional DA voters have responded, they've been very critical. They've been highly critical. They've been highly critical of John Steenhuisen and they've accused him of becoming one of them in inverted commas, alluding to enjoying the perks of being in government and enjoying the perks of being part of the leading structure. But more than anything, Sakina, we've gone past the stage where the statement of intent is a good enough document on which South Africa is currently being run at the moment. Lawmakers urgently need to be brought in to promulgate these laws where we need a GNU Act, and part and parcel of what this GNU Act will do is to stabilize how it's going to operate, and it's to give it a legislative framework to say, should we find ourselves in a position where no party gets a majority and we have to go into this coalition partnership or this partnership institutional arrangement, this is how it's going to go. Because outside of a legal framework, it's really always going to be what we are experiencing now. The ANC wants a reset. The DA doesn't want anybody else coming in because they're looking out for their own political interests. They know how important it is for them to have ministers within the GNU. But also what we have not yet established is whose policies are being implemented in the GNU, because all of these parties that are currently in this arrangement, delivered their own manifestos, which in many parts were their policies. And so in the absence of actually knowing, are we running on the ANC's policies, the DA's policies, how much of your policy are we going to implement? These are the important things that a promulgated act will actually give us clarity on. And in the absence of that, we're really going to be finding ourselves in the same position over and over again.
So this is the latest stress test for the GNU, Sanusha. We have less than a minute. Do you see this GNU surviving a full parliamentary term?
It's difficult to say. I think it would. I think in terms of the fact that in Parliament as well, like Khanyi says, it's not going to be easy to get out of the space. I think chief whips in Parliament are also bringing their parliamentarians and MPs into line. But I think the challenge is that the GNU is actually going to be much more about how does it actually manifest at the local level. And so I think that's going to be the biggest stress test for the GNU. At the provincial and national level, yes, they navigate it, they play these politics, it's transactional, they throw their toys out of the cot, then they bring it back, then they, you kind of can do that at the bigger and at the national level. But at the local government level, I think that's the big stress test, because if you don't have that at the local government level, and if you're now going as a political party individual, then it becomes even more of a stress test for the GNU.
All right, that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much, political analysts Khanyi Magubane and Sanusha Naidu, speaking to us about the ANC considering inviting other parties to join the government of national unity.